The Internet of Things is generating massive data with a web of endless connections. IoT strategies need a scalable platform to navigate through this and thrive. At Console Connect, we make this effortless. Our IoT platform and one global SIM will connect anywhere in the world. Enhance your IoT experience with Console Connect IoT. If you're interested in the Console Connect IoT, contact us now.
Aloha, I'm Jamie with PTC. We'd like to thank each of you for joining today's session in PTC's webinar series, Frictionless Business, sponsored by PCCW Global. We'd like to turn the time over to Darren Yong of KPMG.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to PTC's Frictionless Webinar Series. Today we're going to be talking around smart cities, ecosystems, and monetization. I'm Darren Yong. I lead the technology, media, and telco sector for Asia Pacific. I'm really pleased to be here with this great panel. I look forward to having an awesome session with all of you. And before we start, we'd like to just do some quick introductions. I'll just go around the table and have each of you introduce yourself before we kick off. So Theo, perhaps you can start.
Theo Scherman, Chief Strategy Officer for Hitachi in APAC region. So pleased to meet you, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Theo. Nadya?
I'm Nadya. It's a year ago today that I joined Vodafone Business, and I head up the Customer Solutions division for Asia Pac.
Craig?
Hi, Darren. So I'm a principal smart cities solution architect. I've been at Amazon for 6 years and work across Australia and New Zealand primarily, but also across the region. And we speak to especially city customers about how they can use cloud computing to improve the lives of their citizens.
Great. And Dr. Ayesha?
Hi, everyone. I am CEO and co-founder of ADDO AI. We are an AI company that specializes in building big data platforms on the cloud for telcos, healthcare companies, banks, and logistics companies in Asia, Middle East, and America.
Great, thank you all. And thank you all for being here. So today I want to start this really interesting topic. And as you know, smart cities is such a broad area. So maybe I'll just start off in asking some of you and debating around this conversation. What is smart cities to you and the company you work for? Perhaps I can start with Theo, because I know you've been doing some really amazing things. So how would you define to this audience, what is a smart city to Hitachi?
Yeah, look, it's the old adage, a smart city is to different things in different regions. So, you know, in certain areas in APAC region, it is clean water and stable energy. And in a place like Singapore, you know, it's more the conveniences. So it truly is around people, I believe, and where we can drive quality of life for people. So that's the essence and the foundation for Hitachi.
Yeah, and Nadya, from your point of view, is that relating to you? Do you see similar things or adjacencies around the definition of smart cities? What does it mean for Vodafone?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. We do everything from the infrastructure up to the platforms. And the two things that come to mind is also the obligation and the choice, and giving people the choice. Right? A smart city is an obligation from policymakers and governments to actually say, hey, we have to give everyone access to information. We have to keep everyone safe. We have to actually then also make it sustainable. What is the sustainability value of this as well? And that therefore gives people choice, because you're digitizing and you're going into a digital world of choice, looking at different demographics, etc. So when it comes to what Vodafone does, we look at the end-to-end scenario of what that means for an organization, a city, you know, even retail in certain markets as well. And smart means digitizing, giving people the ability to choose how digital they want to be. It's not something that, you know, a lot of different demographics might take longer to adapt to being digital, but they still have the choice. And being smart means also giving access to the choice of being digital as well. That's how we see it.
That's wonderful. And then Craig, from a sort of AWS platform lens, what are you seeing around smart cities and the things that you're coming across?
So I've had many arguments with colleagues about the definition of smart cities. There are so many definitions about what it is. I think it does come back to how do we use technology to improve the quality of people's lives, and you know, things like the amount of data that is collected these days, that is being collected from sensors and from cameras, from other systems, from third parties, open data sets. How do you bring that data together to make really informed decisions? And the best smart cities projects I've been involved with are highly collaborative, and I think that's one of the things that I get a lot of enjoyment out of. Is I get to meet companies that are building solutions for example, there's a company in Australia called Centritech who've built a system that uses the cloud to control irrigation for sporting fields and barbecues and the like. And I get to work with these really innovative companies that are solving problems. But then when you bring that together with collaboration with especially the large partner network that AWS has, we've got hundreds of thousands of global partners that we can call on, and you can collaborate on a really innovative solutions to bring it all together.
That's really interesting. And I'll come to Ayesha in a second, but this audience that we have in PTC often are telcos, tech companies, platform hardware, equipment companies. And what I've observed in that bridge between bringing technology to people, to what you've said, and experiences often revolve around how do you integrate all that in an effective way. Ayesha, I know you've done a lot of work in the region around bridging that last mile and working with governments and health companies and the like. How are you seeing Smart City manifest from your perspective, given we've got a lot of the technology happening, but what areas are you looking at now?
Well, I tend to look at first what our citizens need to build a more human-centric citizen journey. So Singapore is a great example of the fact that from the moment you're born to the moment that you pass away, you have a journey. It's like the customer journey with a citizen journey. And how have you facilitated every touch point of that citizen, whether that is in that citizen's interaction with the government, whether it is when that person is driving or in their home, or is it feeling secure or has the right education, to the point of we're even working with governments now on pandemic resilience. And in each of this, we focus on data. So first is the identification of a human-centric or citizen-centric journey touch point, which we can improve. And then because we're an AI company, we tend to see where data can inform that decision-making and even automate that facilitation completely. So for example, for one large country, we're going to be building a crisis management data infrastructure. And for that, they will be connected to all their clinics and all their hospitals to try to understand where they can actually identify hotspots, where they can identify where something like the pandemic may be rising, how they can optimize the allocation of doctors and medications over there, and also the efficacy of vaccines, for example, that are happening. And then after that, another thing that one of the values that we have is that anytime you use data and AI or any kind of smart technology, it has to be governed properly. Now, some countries like Singapore have that governance in place to a degree, especially for data. AI is evolving. For others, it's newer. But this is what I mean by kind of a value-based smart city approach.
Yeah, I mean, you've touched on health, a lot of topics there, the health ecosystem, the platform, the governance, the data around health. And this is an open question to all. I mean, as you listen to that, and if you look at the work that you all are doing, I'm sure you all touch health and that platform space. Question to broadly to you all is, in the world of platforms and ecosystems, are you seeing a segmentation of different types of ecosystems that need to be invested in? For example, health versus other ones. Open the question to the floor. Any observations or comments there from any of you?
We look at it a bit differently. Agree 100% with Dr. Ayesha, is that we also look at the life cycle of the citizen, right? So, but then the key drivers within that is, what is the valuable things for them that change their life? And that might be family, it might be education, it might be healthcare, it might be, transportation, culture, real estate. So there's all these drivers that are key. So when we then build what we call our community engagement platform, it focuses on those areas. But we look at people and we look at the 8 ecosystems, data ecosystems people move through, right? So the physical ecosystem where we live, or where we work now as well, or the physical work ecosystem, then the transportation, the precinct ecosystem, your trade ecosystem, AR, VR, online. So we look at all those and saying, what do we make that fit in there? Or what do we make that is an ecosystem? So where can we touch people to affect their lives, right? And that's our foundation. We look at that. And from there we say, now, how do we touch them? How do we improve life? What services do we drive for them?
And taking it back to a business point of view, I think the way that Vodafone has done it as well is not just about solutions and technology. That is the easy part, I think. It's therefore when you actually go into the industry specialism of it. Financial services will have a different need from manufacturing companies. And also, therefore, then what is those vertical solutions that you can bring? What is interoperable? The biggest thing that has to happen, I think, in technology is we've got so many different brands, we've got so many different platforms. What actually works with each other so that you can have seamless integration of what is smart and what is connected. And that's the part that, sometimes you might go to market with a very early solution, but does it work with what people have access to, like different platforms and different applications? And that has to be brought together as well. So when we do it from a vertical point of view, we can say, hey, this actually works with a certain bank. This actually works with a certain manufacturing company. This actually works with an agricultural company as well. Craig brought that up in his introduction. And therefore, what is therefore good for that sector, and what makes it valuable to that sector, and what therefore is interoperable between from everything from the network, the infrastructure, up to the platforms and the smart AI that they use. And that's the way we look at it. So we don't look at it Vodafone doesn't look at it from just a product point of view. It also verticalizes it.
And I think one of the things that we discover is, and if we look at AWS as an example in itself, 90% of our roadmap is driven by features that customers ask for. And if we think about the ability of cloud computing to enable little experiments in these areas, so that you can start with an idea of a customer journey, and perhaps say healthcare, for example, but then you can experiment with small scale solutions built quickly on the cloud and validate them and then iterate on them. So you end up with perhaps a better outcome as the end result, without potentially the larger upfront risk of trying to bet your house on what the answer looks like. So an example would be a lot of customers are using data analytics in the cloud and things like data lakes. And we've launched a service called Health Lake, which is specifically aimed at looking at health data and the security and data standards around those requirements, for example. So that would be an example of how we've learned from the market and used cloud computing to evolve towards an answer that meets the customer's needs or the citizens' needs, in the example of smart cities.
So really what I'm hearing is smart cities is an evolution of the people and the evolution of people and how they interact with technology. So the customer first, then looking at that ecosystem of who needs to support that. And then I would say the business side of things, the experience versus not just pure technology. And I think that's where this merge of many companies we're seeing is struggling, because rather than selling boxes and equipment and broadband, we need to be looking at the experience side of things. What sectors are you seeing move fast in smart cities? Are you any particular ones that you've seen, any of you have seen really come out strongly? And perhaps also, where do you see the next sectors coming? So from a where I want to focus question, any thoughts on that?
I'll go first this time. So we're seeing a lot of interest in transport. I think one of the things that I've seen a lot of across my customers is that there's been a hesitancy for people to take public transport in the post-pandemic world, and there's lots of transport customers looking at how they can better manage their transport networks. We have some interesting partners like MyVision, which is a Canadian company which uses computer vision to understand what's happening from a traffic flow, but also traffic safety perspective, using modern AI and ML techniques to understand from the cameras they install in the intersections actually what's happening on the ground. So that there's a lot of interest in transport. I'm saying I'd be curious to know if that's another area that people are seeing.
For us, I think and not just because of the pandemic or what we've gone through in this last year, because of regulatory changes as well, right? That is also driving a lot of, and the way that we're working, this remote working is I think it's a new normal, in my opinion. And people, the financial sector is actually the one that's actually moving, for me, the fastest in that way. And the reason for that is because they still have to get everybody engaged. They are transacting billions a day, and that has to be on top of what they're facing from a regulatory standpoint that has to change really quickly. So that change is where we're seeing it the most within our sector and who we service as customers. I think also, therefore, the customers that provide retail services and have been impacted by the pandemic is also looking at how they change. Even if the objective is to save costs, or even if the objective is to actually bring down the total cost of ownership, they also realize that digitization is absolutely crucial to that. Because if you have to be connected to your customers in a very different way, where things are now where there's less face-to-face interaction, then how do we digitize it so that we can still scale and provide the same services to our customers? So for us, it's been the financial sector and also customers that provide retail services, even though they've been more impacted by what's happened in the last couple of years.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot in that space around the home as well, with payments, delivery. Yeah. I mean, you're actually highlighting, what we're missing more. We're not going to retail, or you're not traveling on transport. We need more health services. I mean, all these things drive. Theo, you're going to chime in with something there?
Yeah, look, we've definitely seen a shift around, or an acceleration of the consumption of consumer-based economy, right? So where that is the essential. So I think there's two sides to this point. So the one is our customers, and we have cities that are private across APAC region, and we have traditional governmental cities that we are working with, and we're hearing the same argument for them, saying the ROI has changed, right? The ROI around, I'm going to implement smart city services just because they're smart, or I want to, they're struggling to make the traditional ROI around the efficiency and cost saving side. What we're hearing more and more is that our revenue streams are changing. Our future revenue streams are, and where we get our revenue from, whether it's a private or a public city. So they're starting to say, how do I now start changing that picture, and how do we start looking at creating new value through the same senses and the same implementations that we're doing? So a lot of our focus and the numbers that we're seeing is real significant in looking at the other side of that, and that's really getting people excited. That
topic's really interesting, Theo. This moving away from pure cost takeout use cases to monetization use cases. I'd love to hear actually on this topic. What are you guys seeing? Because we see more and more narrative around, I want to monetize more. Yep. I want to create more value with the data. Any particular use cases or challenges that you're seeing, or advice for those listening on today's call that might help?
I don't want to talk all the time, but I've got a use case that I can give an example for, or where our focus was really saying, how do we let's focus on the new value creation, right? So, and that use case, the data that's coming out of that, and the figures are saying that our savings are equating to about 14% operational savings, which is what we traditionally expect. But that 14% savings is only about 12% of the new revenue we're generating. So that's a whole new shift for the customer, saying that there's so much more new revenue that's coming out of this, that our mindset's shifting. So the cost saving becomes a great, but we want the new revenue. And then out of that new revenue, what is very, very crucial, the data side of that is about 9-10% of the revenue. Advertising is about 5%. The rest is all services to clients and customers on the ground. That's saying, I'm willing to pay if it's going to improve my life. I'm willing to pay if it's a service that basically I need or I want. So that's the bulk of the revenue, and that's making people excited, where their mind shift is changing. When I'm saying, I'm working in I've got a physical ecosystem, I'm changing that into a platform business, and this thing will keep on generating revenue as long as there's people inside. So it changes the whole narrative.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because if you look at even this telecom sector, it's changing the way that we actually build business cases. And I've been across a lot of that in my career. We used to do it in silos. This is the technology I'm launching to market. and this is just it, and this is the business case, and this is the revenue that you get back, and you monetize it. You can't do that anymore. When you build an ecosystem, it has to be, you can't just be about the 5G towers on the network. It can't be about submarine cables on its own. It has to be about the end-to-end platform and the benefits to the end user or the consumer and the customer, right? And so it's also shifted the way that, technology companies have to come to the table to provide these services, because you can't do it in the old way of doing things. It has to come together holistically for the benefit of the customer or the consumer or the person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think.
Go, Craig, please.
I was just going to say, I think there's an opportunity there to enable new products, especially from the telco sector, given their access to data centers, to 5G networks. Verizon partnered with AWS on the launch of one of the launch partners for Wavelength, which is rolling out globally, which puts cloud computing capability out into the edge of 5G networks. So that then enables builders and developers that are looking at building innovative solutions right out in the cities to build on those platforms. And I think that's a good example of Amazon Web Services and the telecommunication sector working together to enable innovation and also new business lines as well at the same time.
You raised the point of 5G, and I'd like to maybe go a bit deeper on that topic. One of the, what's the difference between 5G, 4G? What's the value? As a telco, I'm going to be investing in more CapEx. What's the story and narrative? I'd love to hear from you in terms of what you're seeing in the market. Are you seeing opportunities there? What are some of the things that some of the B2B and B2C organizations are talking around? Ayesha, I haven't heard from you. Anything from that space that you may want to share?
It's not so much in smart cities, but we're seeing a lot of demand in manufacturing. So to do a lot of pilots and to do kind of oil and gas is coming on, like chemical plants. So we're seeing there's an interest. They've been really behind the curve, but there is an interest in doing pilots and things like that. And I think that means that a smart city also has a smart economy. So you want to pivot the economy towards more efficient and more data-driven automation and efficiency. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And of course, traffic, logistics, all of these smart buildings and energy, all of these stand to benefit enormously from 5G.
Yeah, and I'm seeing quite a bit in the manufacturing. I just came off a call before this, actually, looking at smart manufacturing. And another area that's got a lot of interest in connected and autonomous vehicles, and how that connected vehicles can interact with infrastructure. I think I mentioned Wavelength, and LG Electronics is doing some interesting work with us to build parts of their collaborative ITS, intelligent transport system, into using the Wavelength service. So there's some interesting innovation happening in this space around connected vehicle, connected factory, and all of these have the word connected. So it's very central to things like 5G and other technologies as well.
Yeah, it's just to that point. We've just finished a business case, and it was the first one that we did. Going back to what I said before, was that we're looking at automotive, right? We've got a lot of customers in North Asia that have focused on automotive and the automotive industry. And it wasn't just about, bringing together what the IoT or the smart level is. It's what's the infrastructure that enables it end to end. So we stopped looking at it as a silo. We then said, look, we still need the connectivity, whether it's 5G or a network, and then you actually put the platform on top of it. I'm obviously simplifying it, but and there's a lot more that goes into this. But then what platforms then can synergize so that you can have a demand for the automotive industry as well, to make them successful with serving their customers. And that's something that we're utilizing now across a lot of the North Asia patch, because that's where a lot of the automotive customers for us do sit. And going back to to 5G, it's still a very local infrastructure that is required from a local incumbent telecommunications company. Vodafone has that for Europe. We have that in our OpCo markets, and then we've also got it in Australia as well. It's a very huge investment or capital overlay for a telecommunications provider. But what it's supposed to be able to do is allow platforms to integrate better, because you've got lower latency and higher capacity. what it's also supposed to be able to do is get more people connected. So it's not just about technology. The obligation there from the governments and the people and the policymakers that you work with is also to enable that more people access to the correct information that is also governed, as Dr. Ayesha said before as well.
Yeah, from our side, it's very simple. Is once again, what's the utilization on the ground and the return on that, right? So we look at that and we see, 5G, by simple language, 5G wasn't made for people, it was made for devices, right? So if we then look at that and we look at device-to-device communication within manufacturing, we see that procurement will be done by AI within the next 3 to 4 years, right? Which means is that changes the whole landscape around one industry, i.e. procurement, and then what's needed for that, right? So you need to go, new procurement standards need to get written for AI so it can do the procurement. So and that all feeds off 5G, enabling a seamless connectivity and a supply chain or a value chain. So, we look at that outcome and how do we then position ourselves to be ready for that change that's coming down the line, internal as well as external guidelines.
And Theo, on that, how are you seeing, because you're typically doing some really big turnkey style projects, and so how are you working with partners? Like, are you seeing Hitachi sort of being the end-to-end doing everything, or do you see critical partners to enable? What are the things you're seeing that you need for really big infrastructure transformation and smart city projects?
That's a great question. No, great question. And it's not just for large infrastructure. So with this new world we work in, there's no way that one company does it all. So it's all about more and more partners. We partner very closely with Vodafone, as example, in that arena as well. But what we do see though is that the client doesn't want to solve that. We want to come through the door with the solutions or co-creating solutions with the client, but then bringing a partnership ecosystem with us that we can then help solve those critical needs. But absolutely a significant partnership ecosystem is needed. And if you look at the commercialization or monetization that we're talking about here on the bottom and the top end, whether that's on the client side from a services side and then from a monetization side in turning it into revenue, you need partners everywhere. But the key is to bring them to the door. Makes it much quicker.
Yeah, and any comments from others? I mean, Craig, Nadya, Ayesha, you partnering up a lot more with working with providers. What's your sense on sort of the future of getting a smart city up and running?
I completely agree with what everyone said in terms of interoperability, as Nadya was saying earlier. I mean, these are just really important. The only way to build a smart city is with an ecosystem of partners now. When the idea of the smart city first came out, it was about a city operating system where one company was like the mega guru and puppet master, but that is no longer the case at all. We're going to have many different companies that interact, and that's when you need proper governance of data exchange, and privacy and regulations and compliance becomes very important so that we can all benefit.
I think we've just dropped Ayesha there, but Craig,
we need everybody to share the data.
Yeah, so it's actually really interesting because when if you look at it 15 years ago, a telecommunications technology company tried to be everything to everyone, and this is everything that every technology that you can fit into a box and productize, we will take it to market, right? It doesn't really work that way anymore. We just had a conversation on data centers, for example, right? I think the evolution of that is a very simple way of doing things. If there are data center providers, let them do that portion of the work. And therefore we partner with them because that's what their core competency is, and that partnership has become more and more evident, right? So where are technology companies' core competencies? For Vodafone, it is still the network. It's the mobile connectivity and the network. And also then we've got certain smart platforms that we bring together on that, right? But if I need a data center solution, I go to data center provider. So the partnership ecosystems become more and more crucial. And that is not something that we're going to move away from. We can't be everything to everyone. It has to work as an ecosystem of partners that is becoming more and more evident. partner with AWS for connected cloud, with Equinix for data centers. And these are some of the brands that you actually bring together so that you have the best in breed to then put an end-to-end solution together for consumers or for your customers as well. Yeah.
A bit of a controversial question or comment around this one. So I'm a telco listening to this conversation, and Nadya, you talked around how telcos are kind of, selling products. They've got a very standard way. What would your advice be to them? I mean, do they need to transform and change? What are the things they really need to do differently to capitalize on this smart city opportunity? If you were them, what would you be doing differently? And perhaps also, how are you working with them? Maybe I'll start with, Craig, maybe from your end, what are you seeing from AWS and Nadya? And I'd like to hear from all of you actually on this question.
So when we look at our telco customers, a lot of them are looking at data center consolidation for a lot of their workloads. And so Verizon, for example, all in the cloud. And so the typical, I suppose, what we all grew up with as enterprise IoT, IT, sorry, not IoT, is being migrated to the cloud. But there is a large number of emerging edge use cases, and this is driving interesting patterns of adoption in 5G, where you can distribute elements of the workload out to the edge of networks when there's a requirement for it, whether it's a critical safety application in a factory and you really need to have something that responds in single milliseconds, or something around a connected medical equipment where you just need that real close responsive workload. So there's what we're seeing customers in the telco do is move away from a large amount of CapEx in traditional data centers, and that then frees them up to invest in some of these digital initiatives, which allows them to move quicker on opportunities. And speed is disproportionately important in the modern world. And I think the pandemic really showed that up with the many of the customers I deal with directly who are further along on their digital transformation, were able to respond quickly, and sometimes actually got some advantage out of their situation. I worked very closely with the University of Melbourne on their Smart Campus platform, and they managed to save $400,000 in energy costs last year, just because they had the capability to look at occupancy and energy usage across their primary campus. So, and that capability was built up over a period of time. So I think that's what I'm seeing. I'd be interested to hear what others have to say as well.
I like the point of, free up what you can so that you can be digital. If you're going to sell digital, you have to be digital, right?
Digital native, democratized data, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's absolutely true. The investment in digital, we've got a Tech 2025 strategy to be completely digital. And it's not just the way what we sell to our customers, is the way that we operate as a telecommunications company. So therefore, you look at where you've got your core assets. That's our value proposition. You also therefore say, hey, because of these assets, what can you do to be digital on top of it? That change is becoming really quickly. Craig hit the nail on the head when he said the speed at which you operate has to be consistent with what consumers and customers are expecting. There is no, I'll get back to you tomorrow. Everyone's on WhatsApp, on chat, on different digital platforms where you can actually speak to people a lot better and more, more collaboratively these days. And it's very interesting when you look at the dynamics, is that if you're going to sell that technology to your customers, and you're actually going to provide that service, you have to yourself, be digital and go be part of the digital transformation. I think with a lot of customers, they do want to get there. They absolutely do want to get there, and they realize the benefits of getting there. It's more of what journey do they take, and being consultative in that approach of how you get there is a more beneficial way of doing things than to just say, okay, this is the technology that you should actually have on your network, for example. And what we're seeing is the way that we actually bring services to market has to change, because it has to be a consultancy with our customers as to what they expect from a technology provider to bring to market. And it's people want the journey. A lot of people are unsure how they do it. And I think that's something that, as a telco, you can actually bring that to as part of your work with an end customer, that is the value proposition that you also bring, because you have the skills and technology and you've got the resources to actually align to that as well.
So if I'm a telco, I need to move to the cloud, democratize my data, get all that middle office, like digital native. That's kind of the comment. And then at the same time, looking at how do we engage the front office or the client roadmap and transformation.
To define your roadmap as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how far we're all along on that one. Ayesha, any comments from your end? Advice to a telco, what are the things that you think they need to be doing differently?
I think a lot of telcos are actually thinking about this quite actively, which is interesting to see. And there's a lot of the immediate need is just to organize your data better. I think if you're going to be wanting to be digital, that's the first step. But we kind of come in and say that digital 1.0 was just digitizing workflows. Digital 2.0 is you make it data-driven digitalization right from the start. So you organize your data, you log your processes, you measure your progress, you understand your customers. That is the new digitization. And I think that the telcos that want to be competitive are looking at this right now. They want to monetize their data. They want to get into more smart cities ecosystem plays, but that's really not possible till you've done this first step. So organizing your information as you digitize, beginning to experiment with use cases and really taking them to market, testing your models. That's what they should be doing. They should be doing it like yesterday.
So with that world of, Ayesha, you've just said the data, sort of the journey. If telcos are in that space, they have that agile data democratized, said on cloud, on-prem, however you want to look at it. I'd be curious to hear Theo's point of view on that, because from a telco point of view, once I've got all my data ready, but you're seeing sort of the front end use case sort of conversation. I mean, do you see there a strong overlap? Is there revenue upside if they get that right? I mean, what would your insights or thoughts be around that?
So from Hitachi, there's two sides. The first one, the customer side, on the smart city, we're seeing a requirement for a range of networking options, not just a single networking solution, i.e. 5G in the city, right? So if a telco can offer the range, then it becomes easier, but they definitely need not just one single option. And I'm talking about a city that, let's say, will house about 60,000 residents, about 70 million transients through it on an annual basis, right? So they need a range of, and then the monetization falls off that. From Hitachi's side, what makes it, you guys talk about transformation or digitization. I look at it as transformation. We have got 870 companies inside Hitachi. So we are on that journey of transforming digitally these 700 plus companies. But we're looking at 4 areas. So it's your value chain, then how you touch your customer, like Dr. Ayesha said, which becomes key. That gives you feedback for your product transformation. And lastly, we need to take the staff with. We have to re-educate and retrain our people, right? So if you don't do it across all 4 of those, you're fighting an uphill battle. So that's our challenge, especially with Hitachi, because we're not just a digital company, digital transformation, but also an OT company with the operational technology that we're manufacturing. So a significant challenge, but it has to happen. If you don't, it's bad.
That's actually a fascinating point. The IT and OT integration of the future transport, health, we know that's a really big space. Is that a place where and how are you, question to all, how are you dealing with that integration between 2 sets of data? And talk me through the security issues now, because I'm hearing a lot of that in the market, where people are like, I can't migrate to the cloud because the PII and all these issues around security and confidentiality. Is this going to hold people back? I mean, what's the sense here from this panel?
So I think you mentioned cloud, so I'll go first. So at AWS, security is our top priority. So we work very hard and diligently on our security posture. I speak to a lot of OT customers that are looking primarily at the most common pattern I see is that people want to get this rich asset or data asset that they have, potentially got terabytes of data, operational data that's been there for a long time, and they want to take it to the cloud where they can perform modern analytics on it. So they can join it with other types of data. It could be unstructured data, data from other systems, could be third-party data. They won't want to do machine learning on it and run predictive maintenance models. They might be like VW that we've done a lot of work with over the last couple of years with a large collaborative agreement, be looking at how they can measure equally across all their plants, operational efficiency of their different plants, and understand how they can improve that across the board. And that initial story is really about how can customers securely move their data from their OT environment to the cloud to do modern analytics and get insights into how to improve the efficiency and the way they manage their assets, which are multi-billion-dollar assets. They're not they're not small things. The types of assets we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think security is a responsibility. If you are providing the service, and if you're using partners, the ecosystem is therefore responsible for the security of that data as well. Regulations, like just with everything else going on, is the one thing that's also changing very quickly. Depending on governments, depending on policies, that is also something that can actually impact a service that you provide to the market in different sectors as well. And I think keeping up to date with what is happening I'm part of a global organization, so we have to actually review this almost every week. We do it on different products, right? Just to ensure that you are responsible for the security of the data that your customers are entrusting you with. And so that has become absolutely in the forefront. When people say cloud and people say security from the cloud, there's still a bit of an anomaly is what I see. Okay, you're putting my data in the cloud. How do you ensure that it's secure? That is always the first question we come up with. And proving that is as part of the ecosystem that we work with is absolutely crucial now. People want to know, are they complying to regulations? Are they not in breach of anything that, of data policies, etc.? And that's something that we all have to, I think, work as swiftly as the technology improvements or technology, evangelism comes in. The security is also an obligation that we have to also be as quick as when we actually deploy new services to market as well.
And Theo, what's your point on the security and what you're seeing there?
Everything that Darren and Nadya said is crucial. Without that, you can take a long time to build a legacy, and one incident break it down. So security is paramount, absolutely. Now, our focus on the smart city side is, as I said, the data is crucial to help drive services to the people, not make money from the data. If I could make that variation, and that's our focus, right? It's services. How do we drive those services? Which is crucial.
That's interesting. So Craig, you talk about joining up data, and Ayesha, a question around sort of security. Sometimes we're seeing when you join data up, with confidential data and non, and how do you do that? I mean, how from a big data point of view, are you seeing security being managed with personal data, combining data sets at scale? What do organizations be thinking of? Because now you've got video streams, you've got multiple sources of data being combined and joined, and then trying to process them and do them, and then somehow maybe offshore or onshore. What are the things that you're seeing around thinking around data governance, security, those type of topics?
Well, I think it's very, very important. Security is the number one thing that keeps me up at night. We're not experts in security, but we are always advising companies on how to anonymize their data, on how to use transfer learning or other kinds of AI methods if they can't take the data outside the country. For example, there's a lot more data localization happening now. So this is very, very important. And there are certain kinds of AI techniques that you need to be able to use the data that you have that's been scrubbed, is anonymized, or is on the edge, for example. That is also coming now, and that will also transform the way we do machine learning. It will enhance privacy, but we'll have to think about how the models are updated. So a lot of these goals that telcos have depend a lot on data analytics and machine learning, and the increasing data localization requirements and increasing demand, understandably by citizens, for privacy is going to affect the quality and efficiency of those. So what we try to do is come up with data structures and ways in which we can tackle that. And I think that's very, very important. Now, data that's really around privacy. Security is something different. Security is how do you keep things safe and not let hackers in. And it depends if you're on the cloud or you have your own server, if you're using managed services, or we recommend some cybersecurity companies for that.
And from a cloud computing perspective, we operate in a shared services model, or sorry, a shared security model where customers are responsible for security in the cloud, and we're responsible for security of the cloud. So we manage the security of our data centers and the networking equipment and everything up to the point of where the customer builds their particular workload or data set. And so we find a lot of customers, because that allows them to focus on the bits that are different for them, rather than focusing on the undifferentiated heavy lifting of data centers, which we've built a strong competency with over a long period of time. It allows them to focus on those elements of security. We also, a lot of our services, for example, S3, our main storage services, are secure by default. So it allows people to start from a secure perspective. And then because all our services are from a single control plane, and sorry to get a bit geeky, it allows people to automate their responses to security. So automate compliance across all their environments. So if you're a compliance, responsible for compliance of a workload, you can see in real time the compliance status of your particular environment. So automation really allows people to respond strongly and swiftly to security threats. And when we're looking also at the way we build the cloud infrastructure at AWS, we have multiple regions. We've got 25 regions across the world. We just announced a new one coming up in United Arab Emirates next year. I think we've got 6 in the pipeline. So as we build those, the data that customers put into those regions stays in those regions, and customers have control over where that data will go. It won't be moved to another region unless they choose to do that themselves. So that then gives a lot of our public sector and smart cities customers confidence that the data is staying under their data sovereignty requirements. So that there's a lot to unpick there, but we actually find that a lot of our customers come to us and say they feel that they're more secure in the cloud, given some of the things I've just said.
Sounds like what you're saying, what I'm hearing as well, is that there's a push towards more domestic focus with data where it sits, whether it be privacy or security. There's a bit of a trend towards that. I'm guessing also from a smart city point of view that's also plays into high velocity data or autonomous vehicles where the data can't be traversing countries. Question for you, Theo, just because your coverage and your role, are you seeing, any particular markets where smart cities are hot? Like which markets do you think would be really important to be putting up in your priority list in terms of, I need to get into this country or that country?
Look, I know we're running out of time. I think from priority-wise, APAC is the region of the future, right? Just from an overall population point of view, an urbanization point of view, 70% of the population will sit in urban. I think companies need to look at just 2 different lenses on that. If you look at the other big trend that is going with population and with urbanization, is that we'll sit with 2 billion middle-class citizens in APAC by 2030. Those are people that can discretionary spend between $10 and $100 a day, which means the wealth in APAC sitting in the pockets of the people. So when you start looking at business models, the question is, how do you develop a business model that is not just a product out approach, but more of a partnership approach to stay current, stay connected, and stay connected with that middle class or that consumption economy. So companies need to look beyond just product out and a once off with this new economy, saying, how do I keep on and how do I partner to stay connected and stay tapped into the revenues that will flow through the region? So main countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, India, China, so those are your key countries where the population will sit.
Sounds like a huge opportunity for all of us around this topic around ecosystems, smart city, data, democratization, cloud, and partnering up with lots here. We are coming up to the end of today's session. So before I wrap it up, I'd just like to maybe go around and leave each of you a bit of some time to mention what are your key messages to the audience around this topic. And then what would you like to leave this audience with? So perhaps I'll start with Ayesha, from your point of view. What would you like to say to this audience here on smart cities?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the evolution of the smart city is very much around using data in a responsible manner and using data as the key connectivity, the nerve center that kind of connects all parts of the citizen journey. So I would encourage everybody to look deeply into not just the modeling, not just the cool part, but actually the data itself. Where are you storing it? What's it? How is it structured? The unstructured, structured. What are the tiers of your data lake? What is the security and the privacy? The data infrastructure, the intelligent data model, that holds the key and is infinitely scalable if the foundation is done right to generate thousands of use cases.
And Craig, from your end, your last comments.
So I suppose I could lead with some of the technologies which are common patterns like networking and 5G and other ones like LoRaWAN, and that are very common in smart cities platforms and are sort of some of the foundational bits and pieces. But I think if when we speak to customers, a lot of the experience of last year in 2020 was around how they wanted really to understand what was happening in their environment really quickly, and developing the digital skill set, the digital capabilities within their cities, with partnerships with universities, with partnerships with organizations like Amazon Web Services around improving cloud computing skills and also analytics skills, so that people can start with primarily with what they've got and use a modern analytics platform to get insights into their environment that they haven't been able to get previously, and then build, it can snowball. You can get a virtuous cycle from that, and then start to build out more use cases. I think that approach then allows different cities to democratize their data on a scale that makes sense for their cities in the context of what life is like for those citizens and what their priorities are, and allows them to evolve over a period of time. And so I work across Asia Pacific and also further around the world. Really looking forward to hearing from what customers are looking to achieve and supporting them with cloud skills and especially analytics and IoT skills as well.
Thanks, Craig. Nadya.
I think I was going to leave with, firstly, thank you for having me today. And also the fact that embrace the change. Being digital is a journey. Don't be afraid of it. It's more of opening and being open to changing the way that we do things will therefore enable customers to also, and our customers to actually embrace that change as well. And the one thing that is evolving is customer feedback is actually crucial to how we deliver new technology and solutions. Smart cities are enabled by smart businesses and smart organizations as well. So the more we have that, and people are willing to embrace it with openness to what that means for access of information to all and creating that parity across a city, I think that's when you start seeing the change that needs to happen for a city or a region or even a country.
Thanks, Nadya. And Theo, we'll end with you your pearls of wisdom.
With what all my smart colleagues are saying, for Hitachi, it's very simple: people, right? You take care of people, you figure out what people want, that will generate your data. Your data will give you more feedback of what people want, right? So it's about people, serving the needs of people, delivering quality of life to people. If that becomes our focus, the rest will take care of itself. And I think that's the key for Hitachi, and I think that's what it's about, right? Helping people and improving their lives.
Well said, Theo, and a great way to end today's session. It's all about the people. Technology alone is not going to change the world. and we require a people-centric approach to helping. And with that, I'd like to thank all the panelists for your time. I know it's very busy for us, and taking an hour of your time has been wonderful to see you and speak to you all again. To all the listeners, I wanted to make sure that you understand that all of us are on this journey together. And if you do need help along this in any way, we're all here to partner with you and help you through that journey. I personally work with all of these groups here, and I know that we certainly can support you on that data democratized journey and the people journey that Theo has spoken around. So on behalf of KPMG and this group here, we'd like to thank you all. Thank you, PTC, again, for hosting this. And I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.